here. But when Seattle kicked me to the curb, please, the Cowboys, come get me here. That's the only place I would rather be, if I get kicked to the curb. So that's what I meant by, people take life too serious.
It's Brick at Night on Mad Dog Sports Radio. Here's JT the Brick.
Can you believe that was Earl Thomas back in 2017 when he was in Seattle? And he always wanted to play for Dallas, and now everything implodes in Baltimore, but maybe not for the franchise, one of the best-run franchises over the last decade or two. Nestor Aparicio joins us from WNST in Baltimore, a fantastic Ravens insider who has a lot of sources. Ness, good to talk to you. What happened here with Earl Thomas?
Well, I think it was never the greatest fit, right? There was an altercation last year after Week 4 Cleveland Browns game with Brandon Williams that nobody really wanted to talk much about. Brick, you've been around good teams, you've been around bad teams, right? And the good teams are 14-2. I mean, they didn't lose for 4 months, right? So there is no bad news, right? I mean, the good news is Lamar won, and he's standing upright, and he's playing again next week. And that's the story week after week after week. If it was Big Truss, it was Mark Ingram, and it was Lamar throwing the ball. I mean, there's not a whole lot of oxygen on anything that's going on when you're winning football games like that. And Earl Thomas had this situation with his wife that I don't think I need to tell you about in the middle of a plague, running around, wife held a gun on him. That was the most substantial off-season news that the Ravens made in the middle of a plague. I mean, there was not much. Lamar Jackson had a Instagram video of him running around doing crazy stuff with a Sea-Doo at some point back in April or May. But as a fan of the team in the off-season, other than the virus itself and the draft itself and drafting Patrick Queen, the Earl Thomas thing with his wife was one of the crazier things that happened during the lockdown and the shutdown of the spring, getting into the early part of the summer. And then, cue to him being back in football practice, and you hear he got into a fight with a safety. Now, Brick, you've been at 100 of these camp fights, right? It's always some chippy lineman trying to make a name for himself, hitting somebody low or playing a little too hard or after the whistle, or maybe something started in the morning practice that goes into the afternoon. But when two guys are safeties on the same side of the ball fighting with each other, that's not a camp. That's not a normal thing. And John Harbaugh's had this thing, and I learned a lot about it when I wrote the book on the team 7 years ago when they won the Super Bowl, called the Leadership Council. It's something that Harbaugh did then with, at that time, it was Haloti Ngata and Ray Lewis and Matt Burke and Ed Reed and, those kinds of people, those kinds of players. Now it's Brandon Williams and Matt Judon and Mark Ingram and Ronnie Stanley and Jimmy Smith, the veteran guys. And apparently the veteran guys came into Harbaugh and said, all right, we've had enough. I mean, this was almost the team saying, we don't really want him around here. We can be okay without him. And that's kind of the way it went down over the weekend in Owings Mills, Maryland, Brick.
Nestor Aparicio joins us, WNST in Baltimore, Ravens insider. Yeah, what jumped out at me and why I wanted to have you on is because, first off, there were a lot of players around the NFL. I saw Charles Woodson, Rod Woodson. People were going to Twitter saying, wow, they don't get it. So players, Hall of Fame players, or soon-to-be Hall of Fame players, didn't think this passed the smell test. They said there's got to be something more here. And then I know how well you know John Harbaugh. And I would think if this was getting a little bit out of control, one of the more respected Super Bowl winning coaches would have been able to handle this in-house. Why do you believe this couldn't be handled in-house? Or what you just said, the players are saying, hey, we could probably fix this, but he's too big of a headache, let him go.
Well, in-house is meaning that you think you're going to get a different behavior, right? I mean, I would think from a behavioral standpoint, this is not a one-time incident, right? I mean, this wasn't at all about him and Chuck Clark. And by the way, the incident happened when there was a breakdown on the field where Chuck Clark is a guy who was a backup last year. And you can go get the tape on this because it's kind of interesting because a lot of the Baltimore media brought this up. At some point last year, Earl Thomas was talking about Chuck Clark coming into the lineup for Tony Jefferson, who was injured. And Earl Thomas said something like, I came into the meeting and I saw that cat. You know how he talks, bro and cat and all that, right? He said, I saw that cat and I thought, why do you guys need me around here? Which was a compliment to Chuck Clark, saying that dude knows the playbook inside and out. Chuck Clark got a chance to get on the field. We're talking about a 6th-round draft pick here, right? Got on the field, couldn't get him off the field. Brick, how about this? Last year when they had an injury and they needed someone to wear the green dot, right? The helmet piece. Chuck Clark was a guy that wasn't even a starter in week 1. And in week 6 was not just starting, but was wearing the green dot, which would tell you what an incredibly heady football player he is. And he's a bit of a coach's favorite as well for being a guy who always knows alignment, assignment, technique. When that's football, right? But when you know where you're supposed to be, you're ahead of most of the guys most of the time. Chuck Clark's that guy, and apparently out on the field, there was a breakdown in a football play, and Chuck Clark said something to Earl Thomas like, come on, what are you doing out here? And think about this, Brick. Earl Thomas has made $100 million playing football. Chuck Clark is a backup, like literally a guy trying to keep his rookie salary, literally, And I think there's a little bit of that, too, that when you sign a 4-year, $55 million deal and you come in as the hot shot who's got a ring and you're going to the Hall of Fame and all, you're expected to walk and act and lead in a certain way that Mark Ingram did on the offensive side of the ball that Earl Thomas clearly did not do so much of last year.
Wrapping it up with Nestor Aparicio, great Baltimore Ravens insider. So what jumps out at me is he's going to go somewhere. And I've been doing this long enough, as long as you, to know that I think some guys, I see it a lot with boxers. I saw it with Antonio Brown up close last year. I just think that Earl Thomas, because of the incident that happened with his wife, that incident, along with this incident, along with flipping off Pete Carroll, along with telling everybody he wanted to be a Cowboy years ago, I think he's unraveling. I believe he's unstable. I believe he's going to pound through all his money. I don't think he's going to be stable. That's just my prediction. I hope I'm wrong here. There are going to be several teams lining up to get him, including Dallas, who seems like they're moving money around. How much do you think Earl Thomas has left? Do you think he just wants to change of place and he'll still be a great player?
Well, I think he has. He's certainly last year, if you saw him play, he still has a lot left, and certainly the heady instincts that he had 5-10 years ago in Seattle. He did sort of carry a big stick coming in, and I just don't think he ever fit in. More than anything else, in the locker room with a bunch of young guys. And I know, Brick, you had me on the show last year because, the Ravens won every week for 4 months, right? And I remember saying something to you, and we kind of had a laugh about it, and I said, these guys like each other. And I've been around football teams for 25 years here since team came. Not every year do you see guys after games with their shirts off in short circles hanging around a football locker room talking football. Usually those guys get out of there after games. That was a different group last year, and Earl Thomas being of a different age and sort of a different place, I don't know that it ever worked. And you'd like for it to work when you plug and play a veteran guy, and it did on the other side of the ball with Mark Ingram. I would think it's a buyer beware situation that if you're bringing Earl Thomas in, you're getting the football player, but don't think that you're getting this sort of leadership guy because the Ravens didn't get that guy.
Hey, last one. Adam Schefter is reporting that NFL MVP Lamar Jackson has missed the past 2 training camp practices because of a groin injury. I know you were out at practice and you're going to be at practice as a member of the media whose credential. Anything to be concerned about here? He is a thoroughbred racehorse. He needs to be kept healthy, especially around that groin area, hamstrings where he's going to be running. What do you know?
Well, I was out there Sunday and saw that he wasn't practicing, and I thought it was a little bit strange because you'd say, well, first-string quarterback, yeah, that's for the games. For the practices where nobody was in the building for 6 months, I think you'd like to have him out there running around. I think it's still very, very early in. He is the franchise. If his hammy is 1% sore, he can have off on Monday. For me, I think abundance of caution would be the way here. And, they're not banging as much, and they're not doing these the Ravens have gotten together with the Eagles and the Rams and the 49ers and the Jaguars. Every year they've done one of those practice-in things, and they've always had 4 preseason games. Not going to have any of that this year. So, a little bit of this is, hey, we still got 3 more weeks to practice. I'm not as concerned about it, but I think anything that affects Lamar Jackson is it's headline news in Baltimore, Brick.
Good to talk to you, my friend. Best to the wife. Best to getting rid of this pandemic so we could go see some live music and keep doing everything you do.
I love the Death Star out there in Vegas. I love it. Love the way it looks.
Thanks, buddy. Take care. Nestor Aparicio.
Hey, Nestor, thanks. Happy to send you the MP3 if you need it, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate you having me on.
All right, take care.
Be well.
Our pleasure.